So the other thing we have to talk about is the power of openness. Sometimes when we talk about human design, we talk about openness as being kind of a weakness. We talked about this a little bit when we looked at the reflector and some of the conversations that we have in traditional human design around the reflector. So anything, again, that's white, we call undefined. Anything that's colored in is called defined. Anything that's white is where we're not just experiencing other people's energies, we're also amplifying it. And that's a very important piece to understand, because when we know how to use these centers correctly, we actually are able to consciously amplify energy in our open centers, and it can be a great source of power. The only difference here between definition and openness is that openness allows you to amplify power. When you understand your openness, you actually have more choices over how you're going to respond to things. And openness, and this is really important, openness is not sustainable. You can't use energy that you experience in your open centers indefinitely. There's a finite limit to how much you can use that openness. And so particularly when we start to look at motors, and that's the will center and the sacral center and the emotional solar plexus and the root center, especially the sacral and especially the will. These are two centers that one of the things you're going to be working with your clients is helping them really dial into where is that sustainability line? And at what point do you learn to recognize the internal signals that, okay, I'm done, I need to go rest? Because that awareness helps your client make sustainable choices and sustain themselves so that they avoid burnout. The other thing that happens is centers have specific energy needs, particularly when they're open. And when we understand those energy needs, it also allows us to operate more effectively in the world and more sustainably in the world. And it impacts things like communication, as we know, when we talk about assessing by type, right? So, all right. So we experience openness in from other people's definition, and also from the planetary transits. And it definitely, just for your own awareness, especially if there's a longer term planetary transit that sits on an open center and defines it for you. Like, for example, right now, Neptune has been highlighting the gate 36 on top of the emotional solar plexus for almost 2 years now. It's not going to shift until April of 2024. So for anybody who has an open emotional solar plexus and the gate 35 defined, we've had this long-term emotional transit happening, still going on. I know, because I have this myself. And so that starts to really affect, sometimes if you don't know, oh, this is transits, it starts to affect your sense of self, especially if you start to identify with the energy that you're experiencing in your open center. Definition is a more fixed element in your chart. Don't be mistaken to think that definition doesn't have needs. It also has needs. Even though it's technically fixed, or meaning you have consistent access to this energy, it doesn't mean the way in which you experience this energy doesn't evolve. It also can evolve. It's a spectrum of possibilities, or a spectrum on an archetypal scale. So there's no endpoint to how far you can evolve all the aspects of your chart. And of course, with awareness, you totally can have choice over how you express. So there's no victimhood by design. There's no, there's no, oops, I can't help that. That's just my chart. You always have choice over how you choose to express and experience your chart. This is how, of course, people experience you and feel you, even if you don't feel it for yourself. And oftentimes, this is the thing that's really interesting to remember. Your definition is being amplified and reflected back to you by other people's openness. And so even if you're feeling unaware of an aspect in your chart, like maybe you have it defined and maybe it's a split, and maybe it's a split that's way at the bottom of your chart, you're still going to have access to that through your relationships, because the people around you who have openness in those spaces are going to be amplifying that and reflecting it back to you, especially if they don't understand that they're amplifying your energy and they're identifying with it themselves. You'll feel like other people have a problem. And when you start to see that that might be something that originates energetically within your chart, it gives you the opportunity to reframe it so that you can shift your environment and your experience of your environment. And of course, our definition gives clues to purpose and interface in the quantum field. So again, let's remember that openness is power, it's not weakness. And when we start to reframe people's narratives and start to embrace the power of their openness, rather than seeing that that openness is something weak that needs to be compensated for, then we start to be able to help people build better stories about their designs.